All right, so let's just take a moment to set our motivation for what we're going to be doing today. And we think about what it is that we hope will come of our time together today. And specifically, we think that we want whatever benefit we might derive from this time to go beyond just these 2 hours, to kind of reverberate into the future beyond that, as far into the future as possible. But not just that, as far out, so to speak, as possible, meaning may it benefit all those around us, farther and farther out around us, so that ultimately may it be of benefit to all beings everywhere. All right. So, one second. Just find my place. So, I always want to start with a couple of those reminders about just very, very pragmatic reminders of the things to look out for. So remember, first of all, always to keep in mind whether when we're talking about something, whether we're talking about it as a subject or whether we're talking about it as a predicate, right? And to recognize that just because something is true for something as a subject, it doesn't follow that it's true for that as a predicate, and vice versa. It can be, but it might not be. And the second thing that, and along with that, that when we're comparing phenomena, when we're talking about mutually inclusive, mutually exclusive, et cetera, we're comparing them as predicates, right? We're saying, how do these two things as predicates relate to each other? Is it that whatever has this as a predicate also has that as a predicate? Is it a subcategory of things that have this as a predicate that have that as a predicate? Does nothing that have this as a predicate have that as a predicate, and so on? And then the second thing is the word is, once again, which once again in the system is always used in the sense of exemplifies, like is. It's not exactly later it would become clear it's not exactly is an instance of, like, just that terminology, but for all intents and purposes, that's kind of what we mean. It's like if I say blank is an animal, whatever I fill in the blank is something that would be an instance of an example of an animal, right? So it doesn't mean is identical with, it doesn't mean is mutually inclusive with. Any questions about that at this point? Okay. So in that case, I wanted to review the homework. And specifically, we had talked about writing down one example of a pair of predicates that you noticed over the course of the week, and then writing down how they compare. Whether to pick one either that you feel confident in or one that you have doubts about, so that we can figure out together as a group how they might compare. And I did want to run through those together. Hold on a second. Let me just open up something else. I want to make sure that the script that I'm using is phrased in the right way. Okay. So here's what I'd like to ask. I'd like to ask, everybody who's willing, but hopefully that's everybody, one at a time, to share what were the two predicates that you picked and how do you think that they compare, and then to have the script open in front of you so that we could just do the very quick formal back and forth for establishing that comparison. Okay? All right. Who would like to be the brave soul who will start? Janet?
I did The non-existence of reincarnation and non-existence.
Ooh, the non-existence of reincarnation and non-existence. That's very interesting. Just an asterisk. I'll tell you, there's going to be a hiccup. All right, but we'll come back to the hiccup. Let's go along with this for a moment. How did you say that the two compare?
There are three possibilities.
Ooh, okay. I'm dying to hear this. All right. It follows that there are not three possibilities between the non-existence of reincarnation and non-existence. Posit something that is both the non-existence of reincarnation and non-existence.
The non-existence of reincarnation and is non-existent. So that is something that is both. The non-existence of reincarnation is at the hiccup.
Ooh. That's very clever. That's very clever. And here's the catch, right? What you just posited, we'd have to say it follows that the non-existence of reincarnation is non-existent, which is great from a Buddhist point of view. But it would also follow that the non-existence of reincarnation is the non-existence of reincarnation.
Yes, that's correct.
Right?
Say that again?
So if I ask, posit something that is both, and you said subject, the non-existence of reincarnation, right? One thing you're claiming is the non-existence of reincarnation is non-existent, fine. Right. But you're also claiming the non-existence of reincarnation is the non-existence of reincarnation.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
In this system, we would have to say that that can't be true, because something that doesn't exist can't be something.
It can't be an example of something.
It can't be an example of something. I mean,
of itself.
It can't be an example of itself. No, it can't be an example of itself. Believe it or not. Believe it or not.
So the horns of a rabbit are not a non-existence. You can't give the horns of a rabbit as an example of a non-existent.
It can only be an example of something not being the case. Can only be an example of a true negation of something, right? So if we say, tell me something that isn't in your bedroom right now, and you could say the horns of a rabbit, right? That's an example of something that is not in your bedroom right now.
Okay, so yeah, I'm sorry.
So to say, it's such a freaking clever example. It's great. That's exactly the type of thing you want to do in debate, right? And I think to explain the challenge with it gets into topics that we haven't covered yet. But we'd have to say nothing is the non-existence of reincarnation. There's nothing that is the non-existence of reincarnation if reincarnation exists. Right?
There's nothing that is the non-existence of reincarnation, right?
Right. There is nothing that you could posit as an example of the non-existence of reincarnation.
But the non-existence of reincarnation itself is a non-existent.
Is a non-existent. Yes, it's a non-existent. Yes. The non-existence of reincarnation is
that's an example of both.
It's an example of a non-existent, but it's not an example of the non-existence of reincarnation. Because there is no example of the non-existence of reincarnation.
I see.
So for example, in this system, if I said, give me an example of a square circle.
There are no examples of square.
Exactly. You couldn't say a square circle. You couldn't say a square circle is a square circle. Because a square circle, there is no example of it. It comes back to that word is, the way it's being used. You see? It's not saying that
an immortal deity would be an example of the non-existence of reincarnation. Another non-existent, something that is immortal.
Oh man, okay. This is, wow, I was not expecting the first example out of the gate to be this. Let me say this. That is a fantastic example, right? This is like debate. This is like exactly what we want to do. And what you just said is like a great answer. And I'm afraid that this would take us a little bit too far into things we haven't discussed yet, and might therefore not be as engaging for everybody right now. But keep it, write it down and keep it so that we can use it later. Is that fair?
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you. Because I want to do this.
Yeah, definitely. Let's
I
even,
could do it in the email. I mean, we could do it in email, but I really want to.
yeah, exactly. Let's find a way to do it. Definitely. That's great. Thank you. All right. Who's up next?
Can I just ask a question about something you said?
Yes.
I'm just getting it kind of in my mind. You said a square, you said, give me an example of a square circle, right?
Mhm.
And then we said, someone might say, and when you said that, my first thought was a square circle is an example of a square circle. And you said it is not an example of a square circle. Is that because a square circle cannot exist or is not possible?
This gets even a little bit more technical. It's not just because a square circle doesn't exist. It's because a square circle as a predicate doesn't exist.
What's if the square circle is the predicate, what is the subject it's related to?
So that's the question. If I say square circle is the predicate, give me a subject that it connects with. And we're saying,
Square circle. Okay. Give me a subject that it connects with.
give me an example.
A non-existent shape is a square circle.
See, a square circle is a non-existent shape. If I said, give me an example of a non-existent shape, right? Then you could, technically you couldn't even then, but let's pretend for just a moment, okay? So for just a moment, we'd pretend that, okay, fine, you can say a square circle. However, if I say, give me an example of a square circle, there's nothing you can give me. Like if I said, give me an example of something that that both exists and doesn't exist, there's nothing you could tell me. There's nothing you could say. Give me an example of someone who's a married bachelor. There's nothing you could say, right?
Yeah.
You could say there is no such thing. There is no example, right? There is nothing that is a married bachelor. There is nothing that is a square circle. So even if you say square circle itself, square circle isn't an example of a square circle.
So a square circle is not a square circle, but when we say square circle, we are referring to something which doesn't exist. We're referring to something of which there is no example.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Now, so if you think about it, by the same token, anything at all whatsoever would be an example of not a square circle. So, the water is an example of not a square circle. Triangles are an example of not a square circle. Santa Claus is an example of not a square circle. And a square circle is an example of not a square circle. Right? Yeah, it's a very different way of thinking, but it's very precise. It's very precise. And that's how it cuts through all the tangle kind of murkiness of the way we usually think about things. All right, who's up next?
I have a really basic one because that's kind of where I'm at.
I'm very grateful.
Although I did read something in traditional literature that is supposedly a syllogism, and I don't have a clue of how to unwind it, but maybe in a few weeks or years. Anyway.
I that in a couple of weeks, I hope.
Moose and ungulate.
Ooh, moose and ungulate. All right. Now I'm going to have to trust.
Three possibilities.
Three possibilities is what you said?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to just. Luckily, right? So I'm going to say it follows that there are not three possibilities between the two, a moose and an ungulate. Posit something that is both a moose and an ungulate.
The big brown female moose that's been sitting out there last week.
All right, fantastic. Now, which way does the pervasion go?
Oh, well, I don't know the right wording, but the moose is subset of.
Whatever is a blank, whatever is
Oh, yeah.
necessary.
Okay. Whatever is a moose is necessarily an ungulate, but is not the case that whatever is an ungulate is necessarily a moose.
Beautiful, beautiful. So now posit something that is an ungulate, but not a moose.
I think a cow is. They'd have to look it up. There are things.
I believe you. I believe you that there are things, and I'm going to take it on faith that a cow. Now posit something that is neither a moose nor an ungulate.
A cat.
All right, beautiful, excellent. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. Very nice. Thank you, Linda. All right, next.
I have like a kind of similar, really basic one.
This is where we're at. This is great.
I've got to say that when I was doing it, I did this pretty recently, but also I had to kind of, the first thing I did was I read through the example again, and I read through the script, and I also looked at a couple of the examples that he had given, which was helpful. But I also had to like remind myself what a predicate is, and I came up with 2 sentences to work out what my predicates are. And I said, I don't know if, I'm pretty sure this is correct. Wood is a material. A keyboard is made of plastic. So my 2 predicates were material and plastic.
Perfect. Yes. All right. So I'll ask you, how do the 2, material and plastic, compare?
There are 3 possibilities between material and plastic.
All right. Fantastic.
Yeah.
It follows that there are not 3 possibilities between material and plastic. Posit something that is both material and plastic.
Plastic is both plastic and a material.
All right. Now, which way does the pervasion go?
Whatever is plastic is necessarily a material, but a material does not necessarily need to be plastic.
Fantastic. So now posit something that is a material but is not plastic.
An example is wood.
All right. And now posit something that is neither material nor plastic.
A dog.
All right. Fantastic. That was great. Well done. The gods are victorious. All right.
Okay.
All right, Andrew.
Again, I think, well, I struggle finding real examples, and then I got myself in complete mess with it. But the one that I'll go through, and I'm going to get it wrong, but it's
Good.
I said I wanted to compare meditation and praying.
Beautiful. That's great. All right. So what we're doing is we're taking a guess, right? So take a guess. How do you think the 2 might compare, meditation and praying?
I think there's 4 possibilities.
All right. So let me just open
that is neither.
Including something that is neither, right? Okay. So I'm just going to taunt you and say it follows that there are not 4 possibilities between meditation and praying. Posit something that is both meditation and praying.
Saying the Lamrim prayer.
Okay. All right. Now posit something that is meditation but is not praying.
Concentration meditation.
All right. Now posit something that is praying but is not meditation.
Reciting a prayer without thinking.
Now posit something that is neither meditation nor praying.
Watching TV.
All right. The gods are victorious. That was perfect. Beautiful. Spot on.
But then I was thinking, actually, watching TV could be, so it could be meditation. Yeah, and then I got myself in a complete mess. But anyway.
And then what? I'm sorry?
And then I got myself in a mess going, well, actually, maybe it is.
I see. I completely understand what you're saying. Now, so let's say this. Watching TV could be meditating. It could be meditating. So if I ask, if the predicate in question was, give me an example of something that could be meditating, then you could say watching TV,
Okay.
right? But if you say, oh, give me an example of something that is meditating, I wouldn't say watching TV.
Yeah,
Yeah?
got it.
I guess you could go through the process with the two words meditation and television, huh?
So let's do it. How do the two compare? Meditation and can we say watching TV, watching television? Or do you want to say television itself?
Watching television.
Watching television. All right. So Linda, how do the two compare? Meditation and watching television?
I'll have to watch out when I make comments. How do the two compare? Well, I would say there's 4 possibilities.
All right. It follows that there are not 4 possibilities between meditation and watching television. Tell me something that is both meditation and watching television.
All right, hang on a sec here.
Your time.
Something that is both meditating and watching television. Well, I would say that if someone's watching, if there's like a streaming meditation, guided meditation, that would be, and I could also say if someone just sort of reaches a kind of a calm mind state when they're watching a television, that could kind of be meditative.
Okay. So there's 2 points that we could debate, but that's
Yes.
fantastic. Now, tell me something that is meditation but is not watching television.
Meditating on the lam rim
Meditating on the lam rim is meditating, but it's not
with
watching.
no television involved. I'd be very specific.
Very good. Very good. Nice. Okay. Meditating on the lam rim without any television involved is meditating, but it's not watching television, right? Good. What about now posit something that is watching television, but it's not meditating?
Oh, for me, it would be like watching a Charlie Brown movie.
Okay.
Or Snoopy.
Snoopy. I like the Easter egg. Okay. And now posit something that is neither meditating nor watching television.
Going out. Yeah, it gets tricky, doesn't it? I was going to say going out jogging, but that could be meditative.
But remember, again, if we had said posit something that could be meditation, then okay, going out jogging could be meditation.
But if it's something that's
something that is
always,
then going out jogging isn't an example of that.
And exemplify.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
okay. So
I agree with that example.
Throwing rocks into something.
Oh, wait, no, just to be clear, I agree with the example you posited. I asked you to example of something that is neither meditation nor watching TV, and you said jogging. And I agree, jogging is not meditation and jogging is not watching TV.
Okay. And yeah, I guess I'll have to think about the could versus is. Thank you.
Yes. Let me think for 1 second if there's anything more I can say to help with that. One moment. It still comes back. It's funny. Like I feel like so much of it is going to come back to this point. It comes back to subject versus predicate, believe it or not, right? Because what makes us hesitate to say that watching television is not meditating, what makes us hesitate to say that is that we are correctly seeing that it is not the case that whatever is watching television is necessarily not meditating, right? In other words, how they compare as predicates, they're not mutually exclusive, right? We're seeing that correctly. And so kind of hesitating to say that one isn't the other. But watching television as a subject, just watching television in itself, that's not meditating.
Right.
Right? If somebody said, I want to meditate, what do I do? If I said, oh, watch television, if that's all I said, if that's it, I didn't really help them. right?
Right.
So watching television is not meditation. Watching television by watching a guided meditation is meditation, right? Watching television while single-pointedly concentrating on the implications that it has in terms of Lamrim teachings is meditation. Watching television in a distracted manner is not meditation. Watching television is not meditation. Not because of anything I just said, just on its own, just watching television, that on its own is not an example of meditation.
I think I need to still firm up my view of this, how the subject and the predicate relate to the narrative also.
I think, and honestly, I think this is a constant, I mean, this is my experience, a constant thread throughout learning debate. And my personal suspicion is that one of the things that debate is intended to help us do is help us practice that. Because for some reason, it's such an intuitive mistake to make. And it's not just a Western thing either. It's not just a language thing or a cultural thing. It's in the Tibetan debate manuals themselves.
So we compare two qualities and we look for a subject that fits the relationship. Is that?
Yes. We're comparing two qualities. We're trying to find a subject that has both of those qualities, a subject that has one of those qualities but not the other, a subject that has the other quality but not the first, and a subject that has neither of those qualities.
It is really a shift, because I would always think of a giant brown moose as a subject. For example, right?
Yes.
She's out there. When do I need to run? Anyway.
That's
So,
a fair point. Yes.
so yeah, thank you. That helps.
Might help temporarily, at least, to think of it when we say moose as a predicate. What we're talking about is being a moose, right?
Yeah, that's great.
All right. Any volunteers to go next? I don't want to put anybody on the spot if they didn't do the homework, but if they did do the homework, then I do want to put them on the spot so that you'll learn not to do the homework. Sheila?
So would you say something sweet and something salty?
Fantastic. So let's think about that. It's sweet and salty, right? How do the two compare? Sweet and salty. What's your guess?
I think there are 4 possibilities.
Okay, so let's try that. So I'm going to say it follows that there are not 4 possibilities between the two, sweet and salty. Tell me something that is both sweet and salty.
Caramelized bacon.
Caramelized bacon. All right. Now tell me posit something that is sweet but is not salty.
Milk chocolate.
Milk chocolate. Now posit something that is salty but is not sweet.
Sea salt.
Sea salt. Now posit something that is neither sweet nor salty.
A lemon.
Yes, the gods are victorious. That's it. You did it. That's it. Perfect. 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 Would the folks who are joining us by landline like to try it, or no pressure? Just wanted to give the opportunity if you did. That's okay. That's okay. Janet?
Can I do a different one? Like the existence
Yes,
of reincarnation and like the existence of reincarnation and existence, or the existence of reincarnation and non-existence? You want to take your pick?
Absolutely. The existence of reincarnation, existence of reincarnation, non-existence. Yeah, either one. I'm happy to have you try. What would you like to do? What would you like to try?
Start with the existence first.
existence of reincarnation and existence.
and existence.
So how do the two compare? The existence of reincarnation and existence.
There are three possibilities. It follows that there's
Okay, I'm going to say it follows that there are not three possibilities between the two, existence of reincarnation and existence. Tell me something that is both existence of reincarnation and existence.
a boy who remembers his previous lifetimes.
Okay, so what you're saying is the boy who remembers his previous lifetimes is an example of existence of reincarnation and is an example of existence. Okay, now tell me something that is I'm sorry, which way does the pervasion go? Which way does
Whatever is an existence of reincarnation is necessarily existence, and whatever is existent is not necessarily the existence of reincarnation.
Okay, so tell me something that is existence but is not existence of reincarnation.
Existence but not existence of reincarnation. A lemon is existing, but it's not existence of reincarnation.
Okay, good. And now posit something that is neither existence nor existence of reincarnation.
And non-existent, like horns of a rabbit.
The horns of a rabbit are not existence. The horns of a rabbit are not existence. Very good. To be completely transparent, when we get to these more abstract examples, that there are a lot of some of the things that I agree right now. There are very precise technical reasons why I would say, oh no, maybe not that, but maybe you can rephrase it this way, right? But for right now, I think that was great. That was great.
Can you do the corrections?
Sure. So I think a boy who remembers his previous life, that is existence. That is if you said, tell me something that exists, right? You could say that. Now I would question whether that is existence of reincarnation. If you said, just almost think about it almost on a grammatical level, perhaps, like, tell me something that is the existence of reincarnation. And I said, a boy who blah, 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 right? I don't know that I would say that is the existence of reincarnation.
It's an example of the existence of reincarnation.
That's very good. And that's because I think I keep using this word example. Like I would say, like, that's like a demonstration, like an illustration, like something you could point at. It's almost like a proof, so to speak, right?
But it's not the existence of reincarnation.
Yeah, it's not an example in the sense in which I was loosely using that word. What I mean by that is something that in itself has that property, so
the mind is that existence of
the mind is
consciousness, the most subtle consciousness. Would that be?
I think
The same thing.
off the top of my head right now, the only example I can think of would be the existence of reincarnation. Off the top of my head, the existence of reincarnation is the existence of reincarnation.
Existence of reincarnation. It's like plastic is material. So then why doesn't it not follow that the non-existence of reincarnation is a non-existent?
The non-existence of reincarnation is a non-existent. No, that is true. I never disagreed with that. What I disagreed with is the non-existence of reincarnation is the non-existence of reincarnation. The non-existence of reincarnation is a non-existent, definitely.
I see, something that is both, and it can't be both.
That's the place that I objected to earlier. The non-existence of reincarnation is a non-existent. Yes. The non-existence of reincarnation is the non-existence of reincarnation. No.
I see.
Nothing is the non-existence of reincarnation.
Nothing is the non-existence of reincarnation.
Nothing in the sense of there is no such thing such that it is the non-existence of reincarnation. You see?
I think so.
Yeah. One example, I'll paraphrase it just a little bit, but one example from the collected topics from the traditional texts that might help. I'll paraphrase it this way: a pillar and a pot simultaneously. A pillar.
That is both a pillar and a pot.
Exactly. There is nothing that is both a pillar and a pot simultaneously. So I couldn't say a pillar and a pot simultaneously is a pillar and a pot simultaneously. I couldn't say that. Nothing is a pillar and a pot simultaneously. This is one of the early topics in the studies of debate, which is subjects that exemplify themselves and subjects that do not exemplify themselves.
Where is it here? Where is it in our book?
It's not, that doesn't, unfortunately, it doesn't, I don't believe it gets covered in this book. It gets covered in this book.
What book is that?
It's also by Daniel Perdue, Debate.
Oh, it's a different book.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the book that he refers to, his earlier book.
Yes, exactly. This is the one. Yeah. It's very thick. And I was so freaking proud of myself when I'd not say I went through it all, but like when I kind of sort of got through it. And I left it out on the table when Geshe Thupten Sopa was visiting, because I thought he'd say, oh, but he didn't say anything. So finally I had to bring it up and I said, oh, Geshe-la, look at this book is lying out. It reminds me. I went through it and I was thinking he was going to say, really? And he said, oh, yeah. And he was looking at it. And then he looked at the copyright page and he saw the title in Tibetan. And you know what he said? He said, oh, but this book is for very small children. Yep, for very small children.
I wonder what it would be like to grow up with this sort of
I can't
reasoning.
I can't help but wonder that. Yeah. All right. So how do you guys feel about well, let me not ask that question. Let me ask a different question instead. Let me put you guys on the spot, because why not? Okay. Theo, how do the two compare? A smartphone and electronic. And take your time.
A smartphone is an example of an electronic.
That is correct. How do they compare as predicate? So that's a smartphone as subject, electronic as predicate. How do they compare as predicates?
How do they compare as predicates? A predicate is an example of a subject, or is a quality of a subject, right?
Let me say this much. You're limited to 6 answers. You're either going to say they're mutually inclusive, they're mutually exclusive. That's the type of thing.
Yeah. Can I go through it through like the process of kind of logical deduction, like through the different possibilities?
Yes.
Okay. So smartphone and electronic are.
So the first thing to ask yourself is always, is there anything that is both?
Sure, of course. Yeah. There is something which is both a smartphone and electronic, which is a smartphone.
All right, perfect.
Then I have to ask myself the next question, which is there something which is neither a smartphone or an electronic?
That's the last one you ask.
The last one, yeah. So the next one is, hang on a second, is the other way around, right? Is there something which is an electronic which is not a smartphone? Which is true. There are headphones which are electronics that are not smartphones.
Yes.
Too. And now 3 is the last one, right? Neither.
No, the one you haven't asked yet is in the other direction. Is there anything that is a smartphone but is not an electronic?
Right. Okay. There is nothing which is a smartphone which is not an electronic.
Okay, perfect. So before you even ask the last question, we can say say, we once we've asked the first three questions, we can say this much. We can tell whether it's mutually exclusive, mutually inclusive, 4 possibilities, or 3 possibilities, right? So I'll just kind of repeat back what you said. So we know that something which is both. So that tells us that it's not mutually exclusive. We know that there's something that is electronic, but not smartphone. So that tells us that they're not mutually inclusive. And then you said that it doesn't go the other way. There is nothing that is smartphone, but is not electronic. So that nails it down for us. That means that there aren't 4 possibilities. So there are 3 possibilities. Right? So
Absolutely.
Sorry?
Absolutely.
Right? So now we know that there's 3 possibilities. And so now we check the last bit, which is there something that is neither a smartphone nor electronic?
Yeah, which would be a banana.
Exactly. And so therefore, we know that the answer is between them, there are 3 possibilities. We don't have to say anything because it's not the case that there is something that is neither. So we don't have to add that. Right?
Gotcha. So just to repeat it back to you, smartphone and electronic, we have an example of something that is both, which is a smartphone and electronic, which means that they are not mutually exclusive. They can overlap.
Yes.
We have an example of one that is not the other. For example, some headphones, which are electronics, but they're not smartphones. That means that they're not mutually inclusive, which means that they overlap, but one is not necessarily always the other.
Yes.
However, if we try to reverse it and we try to say that is there example of a smartphone which is not an electronic, we find that this is not possible, which excludes one of our options, which leaves us with one last mode of comparison, which is there something which is neither, which we find that there is, which becomes our final statement.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Okay.
Exactly right. So in fact, I think that was a very nicely streamlined way of putting it, frankly. Let me just say it out loud again. Check if there's something that is both. If there is, you know that it's not mutually exclusive. Check if there's something that is one but not the other. If there is, you know it's not mutually inclusive. Now check in the other direction if there's something that is the other but not the one. If there isn't, then you know you've already ruled out something, so it's 3 possibilities. And if there is, then it's 4 possibilities. And then you can check if it's 3 possibilities or 4 possibilities, then you can check whether there's something that is neither. Because if there is, then you'll add that as part of your answer. Right? Okay. Thank you. All right. So now let me see.
So can I just do one thing? So
Yeah.
you can take like 2 subjects, but then if you ask them if there anything that is, then it becomes a predicate.
Yes. Exactly. You can't tell just from a word whether it's a subject or a predicate. You can't, that's impossible. You can't tell. Any word can be a subject, any word can be a predicate, right? What tells us is like, what are we saying about it, or what are we asking? Like, what's the context in which it's coming up? So chapter 5, which I know we haven't talked about as a group yet, but chapter 5 gets into the 2 kinds of statements, right? And that's what it's getting at, in a sense. And it's funny, like I've never in any text anywhere have I come across somebody explaining it as subject and predicate. That's something that I kind of came up with on my own. But it's clear as crystal to me that that's what it is for whatever reason. I don't know why it's never explained that way, but it's so the 2 kinds of statement. I know I'm getting ahead of ourselves. I'm getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but if I say dog is a species, right? That's a statement. In that statement, dog is a subject and species is a predicate, right? Dog is a species, true. Dog is subject, species is predicate, dog is a species, no problem. If I flip it, species is a dog, well, that's just not true. Right? It's not true that species is a dog. Species there would be subject, dog there would be predicate. Are you with me so far? Okay, going back to that first one, dog is a species. Dog is subject, species is predicate, dog is a species, yes. Now, what if I said, whatever is a dog is necessarily a species? Whatever is a dog is necessarily a species. Now, I'm phrasing it that way so that I'm putting dog as the predicate and species as the predicate. Whatever, like the subject there is whatever, right? Whatever is a dog necessarily is a species, right? So that's a statement that is about two predicates, how two predicates compare, how two predicates relate to each other. And that statement is false. It's not true that whatever is a dog necessarily is a species. Snoopy is a dog and he's not a species. He's just Snoopy. Right?
Can I ask, because I was struggling finding an example of this that, and I think this is where I was going around in circles. So people are debating whether the increase of temperature is actually climate change or not.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to compare increased temperature and climate change. So how would they fit in? Am I getting the subjects and predicates mixed up there as well, or?
That's great. So, well, I can't say yet whether you're getting the subjects and predicates mixed up in terms of what you're actually intending to ask, but it's a perfectly fair question to ask. How do the two compare? Increase in temperature, climate change, right? We're comparing them as predicates there. Anytime we say, how do the two compare? Like, in the system, anytime we say, how do the two compare? We're comparing them as predicates. So anybody, what do you guys think? Just shout it out. How do the two compare? Increase in temperature, climate change. Now, we're being Tibetan debaters, so we're being very precise. And by doing that, we will come to realize, incidentally, that the question we're asking is not the question we meant, but that's okay, right? But how did the... Yeah?
I think we'd have to qualify temperature, like how does an increase in X degrees in the world over some period of time compare to climate change?
Basically, you're getting at, that's the question we probably were meaning to ask, but that's not the question we asked. So let's just play along. How do the two compare? Increase in temperature, climate change.
There is something which is both, which is that an increase in temperature is an example of climate change.
Yes. But let's go ahead with what you're doing. Just to be clear, in debate, you would just answer, there are 4 possibilities, there are 3 possibilities, right? Right?
Sure.
In fact, let's try that actually. Let's not think through it out loud together this time. Somebody bravely volunteer an answer, right or wrong.
On what, the next step, like the possibilities?
On how do the two compare? Increase in temperature, climate change. Here's a pro tip.
Possibilities.
You say that there are 3 possibilities. Yeah? So let's try that. It follows that there are not 3 possibilities. Posit something that is both increase in temperature and climate change.
Increase of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. No.
That's a
false. Increase in temperature. The increase in temperature of the ocean is.
So the increase in temperature of the oceans, you're saying, is an increase in temperature, right? And you're also saying the increase in temperature of the oceans is climate change, right? I'm not going to debate that. Let's just keep going. Now, which way are you saying the pervasion goes?
Whatever is an increase in temperature is not necessarily climate change. I guess the only, whatever is climate change is also not necessarily increase in temperature.
Right. So we were incorrect when we said 3 possibilities, right?
Yeah.
What you have said instead. If it goes both
You're
ways.
saying they're mutually exclusive?
Ready, watch. Ready? I'm going to
Mutually
say
inclusive? No.
the other one.
Mutually exclusive?
No, the only one you haven't said yet, but you haven't noticed.
3 possibilities with something that is neither.
No. All right, ready? Here's my answer. Between the two, temperature increase and climate change, there are 4 possibilities, right? And then you're going to say, wait, okay, somebody do it backwards with me. Somebody read the script to me.
It follows that there are not 4 possibilities.
Keep going. Posit something. You have to ask me, posit something.
Posit something that is both increase in temperature and climate change.
It follows that there is something. For example, there is like a 1 degree increase in average global temperature over a decade.
Mhm.
I'm positing, rightly or wrongly, that is an increase in temperature and that is climate change, right? So I'm positing that that's an example of both, right?
Okay.
Now, ask me the next question.
And so how do I ask?
Does anybody have the script open?
Yeah, so give an example of something that is an increase in temperature, but not climate change.
All right, and I'm going to tell you, there is something. The subject, an increase in 400 degrees in my oven when I'm preheating it. Right? That is an increase in temperature, I say, and that is not climate change, I say. Right? What's the next question?
Give an example of something that is climate change, but not an increase in temperature.
There is something. I could even say the subject, the cooling down of the earth during the last ice age. The cooling down of the earth during the last ice age, I'm saying, is climate change.
Yeah.
The cooling down of the earth during the last ice age, I'm saying, is not an increase in temperature.
Yeah.
Right? And then?
Give an example of something that is neither a P nor that is neither increase in temperature nor climate change.
I'll say there is something, the subject, the freezing of water into ice cubes in my freezer. Right? I could also say a rock. I could also say, a word or a thought. None of those things is an increase in temperature. None of those things is climate change. But it's considered to be like more good sportsmanship to say something that's like, sounds like it could be, Now, I bet that by doing it that way, I bet, Andrew, that you'll feel, yes, but that's not at all what I meant. That's yes. Good. This is the ruthless specificity of debate, because if you said that, what I would say to you, like, that might not be what you meant, but that's what you said. So then your job becomes to think, okay, hold on a minute. If that's not what I meant, then what is it that I meant? Right? Yeah. It's fantastic how this helps us clarify our thoughts. Really, it is. And not in the beginning. In the beginning, it muddles our thoughts no end, right? But that's us figuring it out. As we go through it, it makes it clearer and clearer and clearer, so that finally we can get at things that are indisputable, right? So does anybody want to take a step, Andrew or anybody else, at what it might be? I mean, I'm not asking you to read minds, but like, what might be like another question that we might ask about climate change and rising temperatures that might be more to the heart of what we mean, perhaps?
Global warming.
So are you saying, can you say what are the two things that you'd suggest we compare?
Increase in temperature of whatever the atmosphere of the earth.
And
Warming.
okay. So let's try that. So how do the two compare? An increase in temperature of the Earth's atmosphere and global warming.
You want me to do it?
Yeah. I'm still thinking, but please. What would you say?
I thought Andrew was going to do it.
Oh, anybody.
Increase in temperature in the earth, you said, Yana.
Increase in temperature of the Earth's atmosphere.
And global warming.
And just to point out what I'm taking that Jana's rationale was, please correct me, Jana, if I'm wrong, but is that we noticed from the comparison of just increase in temperature and climate change that both of those were broader than we meant them to be, right? Like increase in temperature could be in my oven, climate change could be the last ice age. Neither of these is what we're talking about. So Jana specified both of them to bring them closer to what perhaps we might mean, right?
What
So
would climate change be defined?
sorry?
I missed what climate change would be defined as.
We didn't officially define it.
Oh, okay.
But the intuition I'm going on for now is that climate change refers to a change in the climate,
Mhm.
right? And climate I'm taking to mean like large weather patterns that last, I don't know specifically how I would define it. We're just kind of doing it casually, but large weather patterns that last beyond like a single instance, perhaps. But in any case, let's come back to the new point of debate, right? How do the two compare? An increase in temperature of the Earth's atmosphere and global warming. So
There is something that is both, because if the Earth's atmosphere increases, then the globe is warming.
yep. So there's definitely something that is both, right? So now, can we think of something that is one but not the other? Let's take them one at a time. Can we think of something that is an increase in temperature of the Earth's atmosphere, but is not global warming?
No.
I don't think so, right? It always depends on how we're defining things, but it sounds to me like by definition, right, an increase in temperature of the Earth's atmosphere is global warming. So we already know it's not going to be four possibilities, right? Now, can we think of something that is global warming, but is not an increase in temperature of the Earth's atmosphere?
No.
No.
I don't think so either, right? So then if there isn't an example of one that isn't the other in either direction, what does that tell us?
They're mutually inclusive.
Boom, that's it. They're mutually inclusive, right? But at least by the intuitive definitions that we seem to be sharing here, right? Then we'd have to say that they're mutually inclusive. Whatever is an increase in temperature of the Earth's atmosphere necessarily is global warming. Whatever is global warming necessarily is an increase in temperature of the Earth's atmosphere. Whatever has one of those as a predicate has the other one as a predicate in both directions. Right? Now, notice, by the way, that in what we just said, we didn't make any statements about either an increase in temperature of the Earth's atmosphere or about global warming as subjects. Right? So from what we just said, it doesn't follow that global warming is an increase in temperature of Earth's atmosphere. From what we said, it doesn't follow that an increase in temperature of the Earth's atmosphere is global warming. Now, perhaps we would say that those things are true, but we haven't said that yet. All we've talked about so far is how they compare as predicates.
Okay, so we're defining climate change itself as an increase in temperature as opposed to your example with the glaciers?
We're using, because now we're not using climate change anymore, we're using global warming.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yes, sure.
I'm sorry. So we're talking about them both as predicates. Predicates of what?
Of whatever we might posit. So what we're saying, when I say whatever is an increase in temperature is global warming, whatever is global warming is an increase in temperature, they're predicates of whatever.
So, okay, so the by having them both as predicates, we leave open what the subject might be to be defined by debate.
Yes, exactly. What we're saying, when we give the answer, they're mutually inclusive. What we're saying is, if there's any subject that you can give me that has one of them as a predicate, I assure you that it has the other one as a predicate as well.
So how does that differ from a synonym?
Ah, that's a good question too. It does. I'll give you two answers. I'll give you the Tibetan logic answer, and then I'll give you like an intuitive Westerny answer. Okay. The Tibetan logic answer is that when we're talking about how two predicates compare, we're talking about the predicates themselves, like the phenomena themselves that we're using as predicates. So if I say an increase in temperature, I'm talking about an increase in temperature, right? When we're talking about synonyms, we're talking about words. In fact, to be snarky but honest about it, we would have to say that whatever words are synonyms necessarily are mutually exclusive. Otherwise, they wouldn't be synonyms, they would be the same word.
It could be then a definition. One could be a definition of the other.
Yes, but hold on. Here what I'm saying. So if I say
synonym was slightly different some way.
Well, that's not even what I mean exactly. Like let's say cat and feline. Let's just say for the sake of argument that they're perfect synonyms, right? Cat and feline. Well, what I just said, I said casually as a Westerner. We couldn't say, if you're being strict Tibetan debaters, you couldn't say that cat and feline are synonyms. Cat and feline aren't synonyms because cat and feline aren't words. Cat and feline are animals, right? So what we would have to say is the word cat and the word feline are synonyms. The words are synonyms, not the animals. The animals aren't working around being synonyms. They're just animals, you know?
Could I say, because you're talking about kind of like being specific and like defining the different terms that are being debated. If we come back to the example of a square circle, would it be possible to say that the idea of a square circle is an example of the idea of a square circle?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
Yes, for sure. You could even give more examples. So you could say the idea of a red square circle is the idea of a square circle. The idea of a polka dot. Like you could even say like the idea of a red square circle that isn't red, or no, the idea of a three-sided square circle is an example of the idea of a square circle. You know, because yeah. I just made that needlessly more complicated. I'm sorry. The answer was yes. So in terms of synonyms, again, so we could say the word cat and the word feline are synonyms, right? But the word cat and the word feline are mutually exclusive. Whatever is the word cat is not the word feline. Whatever is the word feline is not the word cat. Whatever is the word cat begins with a C. Whatever is the word feline begins with an F. Because we were talking about words there, right? So that's the Tibetan debate. They don't say this anywhere, but that's how I would answer that from this logic, that they're mutually exclusive because synonyms are referring to words, whereas mutually inclusive is referring to the things. On a more Westerny type of informal way, you could say, probably this is an example I'm borrowing from Western philosophy about something else, but probably having a heart and having a liver are mutually inclusive. There's nothing that you could tell me that has a heart but doesn't have a liver, that has a liver but doesn't have a heart. Or at least we could say living being with a heart, living being with a liver, right? Those are probably mutually inclusive, but they're not synonyms.
They're not mutually inclusive, I don't think.
Sorry?
They're not mutually inclusive, I don't think.
I don't think so. You might totally be right. You might totally be right.
Sure,
But
cephalopods, they have hearts, but I'm not sure they have livers.
beautiful. There you go. So I was wrong, but at the very least, you get maybe the principle of what I'm saying, right? That there are things that could be mutually inclusive, but they don't mean the same thing. It just so happens, it just turns out that whatever is this also is that. Like, for example, here's one that I can say with certainty. Human beings whose name is Gus, human beings in this room that I'm in right now, those are mutually inclusive. I just so happen to be the only human being in this room right now. So I am a human being in this room right now, and I am a human being named Gus. But I wouldn't say that those two things are synonyms.
Wait, say that again.
How do the two compare, if you ask me? How do the two compare? Human beings in this room right now and human beings named Gus.
But there's many other human beings named Gus.
Yes, but that's not what we're asking. See, we're saying, so how do the two compare? Human beings in this room right now, human beings named Gus. I could give you an example of something that is both, right? Here's a human being named Gus, and here also is a human being in this room right now. So that's an example of something that is both. Now, could you give me an example of something that is a human being named Gus, but is not? Oh crap, you're right. I'm sorry. You're totally right. I made a mistake. I made a rookie mistake. What is the correct answer? Yeah, exactly. That's right. In fact, you'd hit your hand backwards. You'd say, stop.
All right, stop.
So I was wrong. I said that human beings named Gus and human beings in this room right now were mutually inclusive. And my debate partner just proved to me that I was wrong, right? So let me throw the question back. So how do the two compare? Human beings in this room right now and human beings named Gus.
It's 3 possibilities.
Right? Perfect. It follows that it's not 3 possibilities. Posit something that is both. We already did, right? Now, which way does the pervasion go?
There is, I always have to look. But basically,
So you'd always say whatever is blank is necessarily blank.
oh gosh, how do I say that? Whatever is, I mean, I want to say whatever is Gus in this room is necessarily a human in the room. I don't remember the exact wording that you used.
All it is that you forgot what the 2 predicates were that we were debating, right?
Yeah.
So I think what you want to say is whatever is a human being in this room right now is necessarily a human being named Gus.
And that's not the case.
That is the case. I'm the only human being here. So whatever is a human being in this room.
Oh, in your physical room.
Yes.
I was thinking the Zoom room. Okay.
I'm sorry. No, I was trying really hard to make it, but
Sorry.
yeah, this physical room, yes.
And we trust that there's no one else in there. Okay.
Take my word for it right now. But whatever is a human being in this room right now is necessarily a human being named Gus, but it is not the case that whatever is a human being named Gus is necessarily a human being in this room right now.
Yes.
So we could posit an example. Does anybody think of an example? Gus. Whoever, by the light of the silvery moon was written by a man named Gus who wasn't in this room right now. I don't remember his last name, but I remember it was Gus for obvious reasons. Now, and there's something that is neither a human being named Gus nor a human being who is in this room right now. Each of you guys is an example of that, for instance.
Or Snoopy.
Or Snoopy, yes. Yes.
Hmm.
Who isn't even in this room right now, but even if you were, right? All right, let's see. I was going to say one more thing. Oh yeah, yes. Just to give you then an accurate example is all I meant. So how do the two compare? A human being in this room right now, my room in this room right now, and a human being named Gustavo Spielmann Cutz. That's my full name. There is no other, right? Except no imitations. So those two are mutually inclusive. Whatever is a human being in this room right now is named Gustavo Spielmann Cutz. Whatever is named Gustavo Spielmann Cutz is a human being in this room right now, right? They're mutually inclusive, but they're not synonyms, I would argue. You know, like I would define them in totally different ways. Okay. So now I'd like us to go into breakout rooms and practice going back and forth with this. I'll ask you guys to take turn, like, you know, I'll pair everybody up randomly, and I'll ask you to take turns being the challenger and being the defender, you know, switching off, you know, using a different example each time. You can either use examples of your own or you can use examples from the book. But it's important to practice drilling the scripts also, right? It's good to figure out how things compare, but do it formally, go through the script, right? One more thing I'll say is, this is my own little personal pro tip. In a friendly debate, you know, like we're not doing this as our final exam for our Geshe examination, you know? So in a friendly debate, if you're not sure of how two things compare, say there's 4 possibilities and then see what happens. Because the challenger will help you figure it out. Another word for challenger, which I like so much more, but it's not used as much, is clarifier. The clarifier, you know? So the clarifier, who's somebody who's there to help you, right? They'll walk you through. They'll say, well, you said there's 4 possibilities, so tell me something that is both. Tell me something that is this and that. And along the way, if you were wrong, you'll realize it. And then you'll say, you know what? I take it back. Let me try this answer instead. And then see what happens. We're not keeping score, so you can keep trying until you get to the one that you like. Does that make sense? Okay, any questions before we break off? All right, then let me do this. Oh, wait, I think I need to be host. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me co-host you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
So you can do it now.
Yes. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I am doing this at random. Boom, 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 boom. Did I get everybody? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Something is wrong, and it's probably just my math. All right, tell you what. I'm going to open the rooms. If you don't get a room, tell me. I can't see what I'm doing wrong, so maybe I'm right. Oh, that's what I wasn't understanding. You weren't showing up because you're a co-host.
Ah,
That's why I was so confused. Hold on. Let me just broadcast to the.
So can you put me in a room?
One second. Did you just get a message? Did it work?
Yeah, I just got a message that to ignore the 3-minute limit or something and keep going.
Right. It's an odd number, so you and I are going to be partners together.
Okay.
I hope that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, cool. Let me change my view so I can see you better. Okay. Sorry, let me just. Do you have the book open to one of the exercises?
Yes, I have it open to one of the exercises. I'm open to 2 possibilities, but is it open to 4 possibilities?
Whatever you'd like. Whatever you'd like.
Okay,
Uh,
let's start with 3. I mean,
So
it's the
tell
same
you what,
script, basically.
I'm sorry?
It's basically the same script.
Yeah, just the ending is different. So can you tell me which exercise, what's the number of the exercise?
Okay, I'm looking at 4.3,
4.3, let me find it.
page 53 in my book.
Yeah, I don't have page numbers, I have the Kindle
No,
version. 4,
It's
I don't know why it's not
there's
showing.
4 possibilities.
Right. Hold on. Okay. I don't know why I'm not finding it, but let's just do it. Oh, I know I can't find it because I'm looking entirely in the wrong chapter.
You want to keep the breakout rooms open.
Yeah, I kept it open.
I
Yeah.
just got a message, so. Okay.
All right. Sorry about that. I'll find it now for sure. Okay, 4.3. Perfect. Okay. So why don't you, let's go through the script. Why don't you be the challenger first?
Okay.
So you can pick
So,
any examples you like.
any examples? Okay, so I'll go through my list. So I started with hands and feet.
Oh, okay. Well, sorry, I didn't say
Something that
that.
has hands and something that has feet. Is that how you would phrase it?
Well, it depends on what you mean. What I wasn't clear about is, since if we're using the script from exercise 4.3, then we need something that we know is 4 possibilities. How about just to warm us up? Why don't you pick something that's in the book?
Okay, fine. Okay, women and college students.
All right. So you start us off.
Okay, how do the 2 compare women and college students?
There are 4 possibilities between women and college students.
It follows that there are not 4 possibilities between women and college students. Give an example of something that is both women and college students.
There is something, the subject, a woman who is a freshman in college.
Okay, give an example of something that is women, but not college students.
There is something, there's the subject, a woman who is in a postdoctoral fellowship.
That doesn't make her a college student.
Like, if she's a postdoctoral, then she's by definition already out of.
College. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, give an example of something that is not a college student, that is a college student, but not a woman.
There is something, the subject, a non-binary person who is a sophomore in college.
Give an example of something that is, which is a woman, but not, which is a college student, but not a woman. Did we just do that one?
We just did that one. So
Right. Okay, give an example of something that is neither a college student or a woman.
there is something, subject, non-binary postdoctoral fellow. Right? So let me ask you then, how do the two compare? Let me pick something a little bit more interesting. Something that has strings and a musical instrument.
I think there are 4 possibilities between something that has strings and a musical instrument.
Brilliant. So I'm going to say it follows that there are not 4 possibilities between something that has strings and a musical instrument. Give me an example of something that is both, that both it has strings and is a musical instrument.
A violin. There is something, it's a violin.
Beautiful. Now, give me an example of something that has strings but is not a musical instrument.
Sewing thread.
So I didn't hear you.
Sewing thread.
Sewing thread has strings and is not a musical instrument. Brilliant. Now, that's great. Now, give me an example of something that is a musical instrument but does not have strings.
Clarinet.
All right. And now give me an example of something that neither is a musical instrument nor has strings.
A fork.
I just couldn't hear you.
Oh, a fork.
A fork, yes, no strings and not a musical instrument. Brilliant. That's how you do it. Great. Let's try it again. You can ask me one again.
Okay, so how about something that sings and something that talks?
Very nice. Very nice. Oh, I like that a lot. Did you come up with that?
Yeah.
That's really great. Okay. I would never have thought of that. I love it. Okay. So go ahead. Ask me.
Okay, so how did you compare something that sings and something that talks?
There are 2 possibilities between something that sings and something that talks.
It follows that there are not 4 possibilities between something that sings and something that talks. Give an example of something that is both something that sings and something that talks.
There is something, the subject, Julie Andrews in The Sound of Music.
Okay. Give an example of something that talks but does not sing.
There is something, the subject, I know there is something. All right, the subject, the Baroness in the movie The Sound of Music.
Okay. Give an example of something that talks but does not sing.
That's the one you just
Wait,
asked.
give something that sings but does not talk.
There is something, the subject, a warbling bird.
Give an example of something that is neither something that sings and something that talks.
There is something, the subject Snoopy.
Very good.
That was great. That was great. So let me give you another one. How do the two compare? Made of metal and office supply.
Okay, there are 4 possibilities between something made of metal and office supplies.
It follows that there are not 4 possibilities between made of metal and office supplies. Posit something that is both made of metal and is an office supply.
There is something, it is a stapler.
All right. Now posit something that is made of, sorry?
Considering it's still metal, it's not plastic.
Yes.
Metal stapler.
Metal stapler, even better. Yes, perfect. Now, give me an example of something that is made of metal but is not an office supply.
So, there is something, a car.
All right, brilliant. Made of metal, not an office supply. Now, give me an example of something that is an office supply but is not made of metal.
A piece of paper.
Yes, yes, fantastic. Now, give me an example of something that is neither made of metal nor is an office supply.
Fine. A plate.
A plate, yes. That's great. Fantastic. 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 Would you like to do this one again? Would you like to move on to 3 possibilities?
Yeah, okay, we could do 3 possibilities.
Possibilities? Okay, let's skip over the ones without anything that is neither because those are very rare. Let's practice these ones first. Okay, so why don't you be the challenger first?
Okay, so that's 4 possibilities. There's my split. Okay, so I have to think of something for you to compare. Or do you
Yes, if you'd like to start with, if you'd like, you can use the examples in the book. You don't have to.
Right. Okay, let's do shapes and visual objects.
Shapes and visual objects. Okay, so ask me the question.
Okay, so how do the 2 compare, shapes and visual objects?
There are 3 possibilities between shapes and visual objects.
It follows that there are not 3 possibilities between shapes and visual objects. Give an example of something that is both a shape and a visual object.
There is something, the subject, a triangle.
Now, which way did the perversion go?
Whatever is a shape is necessarily a visual object, but whatever is a visual object is not necessarily a shape.
Okay, give an example of something that is a shape but not a visual object.
No, the other one. That one is the one I said doesn't exist.
Okay, give something that is not a visual object, but
That
is a shape.
That is a visual object, but not a shape. Right? There is something, the subject purple.
This is a good example of something that is neither a visual object nor a shape.
There is something, the subject, the flavor of an apple. Right?
Yeah, I would never thought of that.
Then let's try it another way. Let's try it the other way. Like I'll be the challenger this time. So, let me think. How do the 2 compare? A city and made by human beings.
There are 3 possibilities between a city and made by human beings.
It follows that there are not two possibilities between a city and made by human beings. Give me an example that is of something that is both a city and is made by human beings.
There is something New York City.
Now, which way does the pervasion go?
See, whatever is a city is necessarily made by human beings, but it's not the case that whatever is made by human beings is a city.
Perfect. So therefore, give me an example of something that is made by human beings, but is not a city.
Table.
Yes. And now give me an example of something that is neither a city nor made by human beings.
Mountains.
I didn't hear you.
Oh, mountains?
Mountains, yes.
Mountain range. Okay.
Exactly. Perfect. 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 So, you want to be the challenger one more time?
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. Can we say something that has whiskers and something that's a cat? That be two possibilities? Or is that four possibilities?
That's a good question.
Something is.
Let's.
I think that's four possibilities.
So, okay. So, you know what? Let's do this right now. You don't have to look at the script. It follows that it is not four possibilities. Tell me something that is both both has whiskers and is a cat.
My cat Veronica.
All right. Now tell me something that has whiskers but is not a cat.
Your dog Snoopy.
Now tell me something that is a cat but does not have whiskers.
I don't think there is anything.
There you go.
That's whiskers.
In that case, it's not for possibilities.
Right.
Right? So then what would you say instead? How do the two, so if it's not for possibilities, then let me ask you again, how do the two compare? Cat and has whiskers.
So there's three possibilities.
Okay, so now let's do it. So it follows that there are not three possibilities between cat and has whiskers. Let's go through it again. Tell me something that both is a cat and has whiskers.
My other cat, Betty.
Okay,
Has whiskers.
that was great. That was great. Now, which way does the pervasion go?
Something that is a cat does have whiskers.
Necessarily has whiskers,
That has whiskers.
but
Something that necessarily has whiskers is not necessarily a cat.
right. So in that case, all I can ask you, so you just told me that whatever is a cat has whiskers. So I can't ask you for an example of a cat without it whiskers. So therefore, all I can ask you is now give me an example of something that has whiskers but is not a cat.
I don't know, a raccoon.
Yes, yes. And now give me an example of something that is neither, that does not have whiskers and is not a cat.
A bird.
Perfect. Perfect. Excellent. That's how it's done. I'm going to broadcast something to the group and we'll do it too. Hold on. Let me see. Did that come in for you?
Yeah, but I didn't read the whole thing.
That's
So
okay. I'll tell you, maybe folks won't see it, I don't know. But I just asked for a final debate, for a final practice for everybody to ask this. How do the two compare? Didn't reply to me and doesn't care about me.
think there are 4 possibilities.
So I'm going to say false that there are not 4 possibilities. Give me an example of something that both didn't reply to me and doesn't care about me.
I don't know. My neighbor upstairs.
Sure, sure. That's fair. By the way, you also could say, a person who you reached out to who ghosted you because they don't care about you. You know, like you could be broad like that. If
You
you
say
want.
also like, you know, I don't know, a fish or something. I mean,
Yes.
go all
Yeah.
the way outside.
I didn't think about that at all, but yes, that's actually brilliant. Yes. All right. So now give me an example of something that didn't reply to me, but it's not that it doesn't care about me.
I don't know, my son.
That's probably a very good example, right? And I would never have thought of this, but because you said fish before, I can also think Snoopy for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Now, what about something that that doesn't care about me, but it is not the case that it didn't reply to me?
The IRS.
Yes, that's perfect. And now give me an example of something that is neither. Neither it doesn't care about me. It's not that it doesn't care about me, and it's not that it didn't reply to me either.
I guess you could say like a teacup or something.
Ah, almost. It's true that a teacup, well, no, I would say that a teacup is an example of both. It didn't reply to you, and it doesn't care about you. No offense. Now, what about something that's neither? It's not that it doesn't care about you, so it does care about you. And it's not that it didn't reply to you, so it did reply to you.
My sister.
Perfect, right? So from that, we found an example for each. So you were right that there's 4 possibilities. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Could you do something like wisdom and compassion, or those, you know,
Yes.
you have to like rephrase them somehow? How would you like phrase that?
You never have to rephrase it. Anything you want, you can say. What might happen, just like we saw earlier, is that when all the answers are in place, you might realize, oh, come to think of it, that's not what I meant, you know? In which case you can rephrase it as you wish based on what you've learned. But you can say, how do the two compare? Wisdom and compassion, right? Wisdom and compassion. And what's the answer to that, you might ask? And I have to think about it for a moment. Believe it or not, my first instinct, and I could be completely wrong, but my first instinct is to say that they're mutually exclusive, which doesn't mean that they don't coexist. They definitely coexist, but I couldn't think of any subject that I could say this subject is wisdom and this subject is compassion. I could be wrong.
The Buddha, or like His Holiness.
I wouldn't say that the Buddha is wisdom. I say that the Buddha has wisdom. I wouldn't say that the Buddha is wisdom. And I wouldn't say that the Buddha is compassion. Because I would say that the Buddha is a being that has wisdom and a being that has compassion.
So you could phrase it as compare a being who has wisdom and a being that has
that. So that would be
compassion.
Yes, that would be a separate question now. So we could say, how do those two compare? So you can compare, how do the two wisdom and compassion compare? Totally, you can. And I think the answer is that they're mutually exclusive. Then you could ask, okay, different question now. How do the two, a being who has wisdom and a being who has compassion, how do they compare? Right? And that I would say, and that I would say, being who has wisdom, being who has compassion. It's a thinker, but I would say it's probably three possibilities, because I would think that whatever is a being that has compassion necessarily is a being that has wisdom on some level. But there might be beings who have wisdom on some level, but who don't necessarily have compassion, like an earthworm that knows what is food and what is not food, has some wisdom, but for all that, maybe it doesn't have compassion. See what I mean? But I'm not married to that answer. I'm not saying that is the answer. I'm just putting it out there for possible debate. Let me just send out a message to close the breakout rooms, so we can all.
Sorry for interrupting.
Not at all. Not at all.
So would you have to define like wisdom and compassion first? Like, is it the wisdom of understanding emptiness versus the wisdom of knowing food from non-food?
Yeah. So what you're basically saying to me is that that's still not what I had in mind, Gus. You know, what I had in mind, you're saying, is still more specific. And so then you figure out, like, more and more, you figure out what is it that you had in mind, you know, and then you can be more and more precise, so you can figure out the answer to the real question you're looking for. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So let's see, who are we still waiting for?
We lost our phone person.
There we go. And I'm going to have to jump off in about 3 or 4 minutes. So.
Oh, okay. Well, then let me say this. One thought that I had is that if folks would like, we could perhaps, I haven't checked this with Sheila, but maybe we could come up with an email list for anybody who's interested, so that you can set up times to practice this between sessions. So if that works for you, Sheila, what would be the easiest way? Should folks just email us that they're interested?
Yeah, or can you just say now, do people know, or if you want to keep it anonymous? And should we just put your phone number in the chat? Not your phone number, your email in the chat.
Why don't you privately? Yeah, okay, yeah. If you're interested, you can just put your email in the chat, but there's no, we're not going to assume anything about somebody who doesn't.
Or I can just send everybody's email. Well, put it in the chat, because who knows who's interested or not. That's better.
Okay, so let me ask about how did it go practicing as a pair?
It was good for us. I would say that, in my opinion, me and Linda, we got through a couple quite well, but we also got stuck. We went back to the blue and color of cloth one, and we got stuck a bit, and we realized something, that maybe the bits where we were both getting a bit stuck. And I think we got it right, but I'm not sure. But no, it was helpful. It was definitely like really helpful to do it.
Okay, what did you guys, how did they compare, blue and the color of cloth?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so if I remember correctly, the last time we did it, so we said, okay, how do the two compare? There are 4 possibilities between blue and the color of cloth.
Well, is that there are not 4 possibilities between blue and the color of cloth. Posit something that is both blue and the color of cloth.
There is something the subject, a blue piece of cloth.
All right, now give me an example of something that is blue but is not the color of cloth.
There is something the subject, the color of a blue sky.
Right. Now give me something that is the color of cloth but is not blue.
There is something the subject, a green piece of cloth.
Very good. And now give me something that is neither blue nor the color of cloth.
There is something the subject, the color of a gray sky.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, so
Perfect.
that went quite well, but I think where we got stuck on the wording of like the color of a blue sky, right? I think at one point one of us said like a blue sky or something like this, and we were wondering whether it could still be accepted. And the
That's
other
a-
thing that happened just really quickly was at the beginning, Linda was the challenger, and I said something like there are 3 possibilities, and in the dialogue we got stuck at, oh my god, I'm just
Which
going
way
back
does
to,
persuasion go?
yeah, exactly, because it ended up being whatever is blue is necessarily the color of cloth, and yeah, then we had to go back to 4 possibilities. Yeah,
Yes.
that's how it went. It was good.
Perfect. That's how it's supposed to go. That's how it's supposed to go. Like when you make a claim and then the challenger / clarifier helps you see like what you're saying more clearly. And then you say, oh, wait a minute. Now that you're explaining it to me, that's not what I meant. I backtrack and I say this instead. Right? In terms of your first question about, could you just say the sky, the blue sky, is that blue? Here we would say no, because we would say that the blue sky is not a color. The blue sky is the sky. A beanbag chair is a kind of chair, not a kind of beanbag. A beanbag is a kind of bag, not a kind of bean. Right?
Yeah.
The blue sky is a kind of sky, not a kind of blue.
But the color of a blue sky
is a color.
Is a color. Yeah. So a blue
kind of blue, not a kind of sky. Yes.
A blue sky is a kind of sky, but the color of a blue sky is a color.
Yes.
Cool.
Think about it this way. A man walking down the street is a man.
Yeah.
It's not a name. The name of a man walking down the street is a name, not a man.
Yes, absolutely. I'm really sorry, but I have to duck out just a little bit early this session.
That's okay. That's okay. Thank you.
Me too. And that explanation, I hear it, but I don't quite get it yet. So I'll meditate upon it.
Yes.
See you next time.
Take good care, guys. Thank you.
See you next week. Bye-bye, everyone.
Be well. So remaining folks, anything that came up during the exercise?
Yeah, it was not being granular enough in the words that were being used. Not defining well enough words that were being used, I found, which that was the, because as you're going through it, you're going, well, actually, what do you mean by that?
Let me ask you this. What do you suppose? So here we're using the system that's very strict, and all of that kind of is thrown in our face. What do you guys suppose happens like in real life where we don't have to do that?
I think it's clear to me that people are just in real life, which is where you can probably tell some of my things were coming. This isn't real life, but like the conflation of or people arguing that not having clear definitions about, using the climate change example of what do you mean by climate change, and people saying, well, it's not real.
Yes.
Well, what do you actually mean by it?
Exactly. I think people talk past each other all the time, and they're making arguments that are irrelevant to what the other person is saying in both directions. And this is kind of not allowing us to do that. That's why it forces this level of specificity. Yeah.
We had good and difficult topics. I mean, challenging topics like Buddhism and science and Buddhism and religion. And we didn't get too far with emptiness of intrinsic existence and science, but maybe it should have been the concept of, or the scientific concept of emptiness and
Interesting.
science, and then Buddhism, and then guru devotion and a cult.
Oh, wow. You guys started from the deep end. Wow.
Can't you?
That's, you know what I sometimes think of that. It's like saying, okay, let me teach you about gravity. Okay. Gravity. Well, let's take the example of a helium balloon. That's not where to start. It applies, it works. But that's what I always do myself. So it's
Well, I think for me, I mean, the cult one and the guru devotion, I was thinking through things that people have said or would say, when you start talking about how, for me personally, starting to go along to Jamyang a bit more, and the argument could be, well, they're talking about guru devotion, are you getting involved in a cult?
sure.
Well, actually,
Yeah.
how can you have that discussion and have conviction in what you're saying that, well, no, it is not a cult because ABC.
Right, right. Well, I think the only way to really answer that question is to say to the person, what do you mean by cult? You know, that's also the only way to answer, is Buddhism a religion? You know, really, it's like, well, what do you mean by religion? So if they start by saying, well, a religion is a system that says that God created, you can say, stop, Buddhism is not a religion. You know, but if they say, well, a religion is a system of philosophies that posits that the mind is, so far I can't say anything yet, let me hear what else they have to say, right? But once you do figure out what the person means, like let's say that the person says, okay, let's say the person says, are you in a cult? And I say, well, what do you mean by cult? They say, well, a cult is a group of people who come together for spiritual practice, and one of them is considered the teacher. I say, well, yeah, then in that case, yes, I am in a cult, you know? And then they'll say, oh, you're in a cult, you're in a cult, you just admitted it, you're in a cult, right? And I say, well, what's the problem with that, right? And then they'd say, well, when you're in a cult, you're getting brainwashed. That's not like what you said is coming together for spiritual purposes and somebody's the teacher. How is that getting brainwashed? You see what I mean? Like, you can't define something one way and then react to it as if you had defined it a different way. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, if the other person is also into Tibetan debate, that it's delicious, because then you can really get at the point. But even if they're not, the more you accustom yourself to thinking in these terms, the clearer it will be where the other person is like, you know, presuming that it's the other person, like where they're veering off. And then you can say, wait, no, you know, you can say it in regular English. And sometimes it will become clear where you're making the mistake too, which is even better. All right. Any last thoughts before we stop for today?
The only question, last one I've got, if it's all right. You said to read part of chapter 5 last week.
Yes, I never said what the homework was for today. Yes, I said, let me just see. Yes, I didn't say this before, but my hope for next time is first to start talking about the material in chapter 5. Yeah. And of course, I would suggest continuing to practice these same exercises, the same material, coming up with more examples, sorting out how you think things might relate to each other. And you can even, if Sheila, I don't think you'll mind if I share the example that we were using before between us. You can even play around with something like this. So like Sheila and I, at one point, we were debating how do the two compare compassion and wisdom, right? And then after we did that, Then Sheila said, well, then how about this? What about a being who has compassion and a being who has? Spoiler alert, the answer was completely different. So you can also play around. Well, what happens if I change my wording? What happens if I change the focus a little bit this way, that way? Maybe they'll still compare the same way. Maybe they'll compare in a different way. Maybe they'll compare in the same way, but the examples will be other examples. Right? Okay. Well, wonderful, wonderful. So, Jen, I'm happy to stick around a little bit. I saw you ask. But let's end with a dedication. And we can think everything that we've done in these 2 hours that we've been together leaves an imprint in our mind, shapes the direction of our mind. And that will have, that will manifest in ways in our lives. And so we think, may it only manifest in ways that deepen our caring for our own well-being in the long term, but that deepen our caring for suffering everywhere and happiness and lack of happiness everywhere. So we become truly motivated to be of best possible benefit to all beings. And may it only manifest in ways that deepen our wisdom, broaden our wisdom, clarify our wisdom, so that we can accomplish the benefit of all beings everywhere. All right. Thank you guys so much. Thank you.